Okay. We are not live. There's something going on my side with the desktop. It's not loading. It's very slow.
Does that have anything to do with the rattling that is like overcoming me?
I think that's some audit program, internal control systems. So here is the first page with some.
Okay, you guys, we're live.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. We apologize for the delay. Commissioner Lynch?
Okay, good. So are we on now? We're live stream?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. All right, this is the January 27th Audit Committee meeting. It is 5:41 p.m. I believe we have a quorum. It looks like the entire committee's here. Myself, Commissioner Edwards, Wright, Davenport, Commissioner Myers, welcome. And Commissioner Thornton, I've asked her to sit in on this meeting to bring some context. We also have Hank Kadir and Beth Higgins in on the meeting. We're going to talk about the presentation we saw a couple months back from the Overview Commission about the Office of Operation Analysis and the committee and some potential recommendations. But first, I want to go ahead and ask Auditor Maddox to give us an update on staffing issues as well as audits that are currently underway.
Okay, sure thing. Starting with the two audits, the audit of the Animal Services Department and the Food Management Program, I am finalizing those in the next day, and I will be reaching out to the directors to schedule another closing interview. We've had one, but it was a few months ago. There were a few things that changed at the end that I would like to communicate with the directors. So I will meet with them. I will plan to meet with them early next week, and then after our meeting, submit the reports to both of those departments. The hiring in the office, there were 9 applications received and reviewed, and upon a conversation with one of the ladies in the HR department, it would be in the best interest of this office to actually re-advertise and change the job description, because it's very generic and it really does not help one understand what the tasks are, the ideal tasks are, as well as being able to communicate that during the interview. So the follow-up with the HR department is going to be at the end of this week, and I'm going to submit some language for the position advertisement to change, the language in that to change slightly, and then we hope to be able to re-advertise quickly. I won't know until next week, though. And then as it relates to one more thing, I just wanted to let you all know that the audit management software will be uploaded on our system next month, and we're excited. That's okay. It.
So the advertisements for the positions, is that for both positions or just one?
We're going to start. I apologize. We're going to start with just one position for now.
Okay. And which position is that? Can you give us an idea of what the new language is?
Yes, both of the positions are titled management analyst, but the description of the duties and the job is very obtuse. And I think that has been a disconnect for many applicants, as well as myself during interviews, narrowing down and communicating specifically what the day-to-day job is and what it entails. It's more audit work than the job description reads. And so that is going to be changed and updated on the on the job description.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions, comments?
Melissa, do you want to call us or do you want us to just chime in?
Yeah, just chime in.
Okay. Thanks for that update. Auditor Maddox. How many interviews did you have of the 9 applicants?
I didn't have an official interview during the holiday season. I reviewed the 9 applications and all of the documents that they provided. And there was one gal that I reached out to because she was a former employee of the county, just to understand where she was currently working on.
And Melissa, the only other reason I had my hand up was to talk about the minutes, but we can get back to that. Thanks for the update. And I really do. Am I the only committee member that really likes the audit status report? We haven't gotten those for the last 2 updates, and I just think it's easier than trying to write down the updates.
I included the updates from September through this month's meeting on the meeting invitation. It's a PDF file. I'll be happy to send it to you right now, though.
So does it have the charted status report?
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
okay. So maybe I didn't go far enough in my document, Stephanie. I apologize for that. So I'll go.
That's
I'll go.
right. I'll send it to you directly right now.
Okay, and then just about the minutes. That's the only other comment I wanted to make when it's time, Melissa. Chair Link.
Yeah, I don't see the documents attached to the meeting invitation either.
There are 4 attachments, but let me pull it up. The minutes.
Maybe I'm looking at the wrong
start with the minutes.
What's the date of that email? Because the email that I've got with the invitation is from the 22nd.
Yesterday at 11:47 a.m.
Okay, maybe that's why. I don't know. We just get so, okay, there it is. No, that's from, okay.
It's a thread with Kara Myers and yes. Yeah,
Just
Kara
get
Myers in the thread.
Stuff.
Excuse me, Commissioner Myers, sorry.
It's from yesterday at 11. Okay, there it is. Okay. No wonder. Okay. I wanted to have this meeting primarily to discuss the report from the Overview Commission. Since we are kind of treading water right now while the office is understaffed. I knew there wouldn't be much progress on the audits that are underway. But the primary reason I wanted to have this meeting is so we could go back and discuss that presentation because we didn't have an opportunity to do so. And I do want to schedule a meeting for next month so we can take care of any ongoing business. But I wanted to really dive into this presentation before we forgot about it. I feel like there are pressing matters that we need to consider, and we haven't considered the Overview Commission report yet, but I was hoping that this committee would be prepared to, address that report when it gets presented with, recommendations based on the presentation that we've gotten that's exclusive to the Office of Operational Analysis. So that's the primary reason for this meeting. So if anybody has any more questions regarding the ongoing audits and staffing, let's go ahead and address those, and then let's move on to this Overview Commission report. Anyone? Nope. Okay.
Hey, Melissa,
Uh-huh.
can we cover the minutes and then move on?
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to. I would like to hold the minutes till the next meeting. I have not had a chance to look at them. I didn't realize this second email came through.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I'd like to just address regular business at our next meeting. And this meeting, let's just focus on this overview commission.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I also want to say, this is primarily while I'm here, but I think when we have guests, if we can wait to the next meeting to have business, but we got guests and we need to probably give them that courtesy to move forward.
Yes. Thank you, Ovita. Yeah. I hope everybody had a chance to go through that presentation again and make notes and is ready to comment on things that stood out to you, because I'm hoping we can send some recommendations to the mayor to help make for a more functional committee as well as a more functional Office of Operational Analysis. You know, there have been challenges with staffing as well as with you know, just lagging behind on the number of audits that are produced, and also challenges within this committee regarding, you know, where to go, which way to direct the office. So, I mean, I'll start by pointing out one thing that struck me, you know, with this presentation is they point out that this office has the potential to be political. This committee has the potential to be political. And I feel like that's something that we need to address as a committee. You know, an audit process should not be political at all. And I think that that is a real stumbling block for this committee. I think it's slide 5.
But what does that even mean, Madam Chair, in terms help me understand, you know,
because
this process is political. Like what,
I can tell
like
you
what exactly?
if we
what are the negative characteristics?
We direct the auditor's office to investigate certain departments, and yes, there's definitely been political blowback from, say, the office of the sheriff's, the jail. You know, we have our own constituents and our own constituents' concerns, and we might be motivated by pressures from those where we shouldn't be. It should be a purely objective process. Not only that, none of us are really qualified in analysis or organization. I mean, actually, Carol, you might be. We really, I believe that this should really be a citizen-driven committee rather than a politician-driven committee. We have interpersonal relationships with staff members, management, all of that stuff that might inhibit the process or influence the process one way or another. So I really strongly believe that we should depoliticize this committee and this process, and approach the mayor with a request to make this primarily a citizen committee. Not a thoroughly citizen committee, but a majority citizen committee. That's my stance on the whole issue. And, you know, being a citizen committee, it would bring in more highly qualified people who can have some more experience with analysis and can direct the office. You know, I mean, we've got so many different things on our plates as elected officials. I feel like some of us are not necessarily devoting the time and energy that this committee needs. And, you know, I feel like there's a lot more homework that needs to be done. And I'd like to have that discussion with this committee about, you know, talking to the mayor about a full-on reorganization of the committee itself, and then allowing that new committee to make recommendations regarding procedures, processes, the organization of the office, anything else. Does anybody have any comments on that?
I'd be happy. I mean, if you think somebody else, you know, if you want to, I mean, I'll just volunteer and say, I'd be happy to step down from the committee and have a citizen take my spot. I could even maybe nominate some citizens. You know, I would certainly be open to that.
So does this have to go before the commission, or does the mayor pro tem or anybody else have that ability to do that? First of all, I will say I agree with this. I've talked to Commissioner Link about it. I totally agree with the concept. I don't know if everybody will. I don't. I don't know if everybody would knows or understands the work that was presented to us. If we went in that direction, I think that we need to ask the mayor to give us a work session so this can be presented to us, and it would better explain why some of us have come to um, a realization that this might be the best way to go. I don't think people should get on and off a committee and recommend folk. I think that it should go through a process, and we should be clear about the qualifications that we would that would be helpful. So that's my thought. I mean, I wouldn't want somebody to a citizen to join this committee and know as little as I do or less. This has proven to be a very taxing and a very important committee. It's probably one of the most important out of the standing committees, in my opinion.
And I will let y'all know that I've had some discussion with the attorney, and the audit committee itself is not outlined in the charter. It's purely a function of the mayor appointing the committee. It's the mayor does have the power to appoint committees and to determine how they are appointed, whether they're advertised or there's an application process, or he simply appoints, or he asks commissioners to appoint. It's completely up to him. So, and according to the charter, we don't even need an audit committee. It's not entrenched in the charter that an audit committee should even exist. I do believe that it is essential to have an audit committee, but I believe that it should be a citizen-driven effort. So
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
So from my perspective, the reason you have an audit committee and the reason you have the audit function of having an audit committee, it is generally considered best practices in the sense of optimizing the audit function in the municipality at our level. That is considered a best practice. But just having the audit committee and the what as opposed to how you're executing it is really the question. I do think that you'll find on analysis that having an audit committee is the best way to optimize the management, the strategic management of the audit function. How it's done, so how you make up the committee, how they do their governance, their ability to think and project strategically about the audit function is really what brings the value of the audit committee. And so if you're thinking about, how it should be in the charter as such, should the composition of it be directed, or should it be more managed based on current situations and requirements that can be changed as the environment changes? And then what the specific functions, what they do and how they do it is, there are also best practices out there as well. So in terms of how an audit committee functions, and the first and most important thing is it needs to support the environment that you're in. And so it needs to be designed and strategically designed so that it matches what we have here in Athens-Clarke County, a very special government, a very special town. And we have some weaknesses that we've seen in our system here in terms of our accountability functions. So we don't take advantage of some of the accountability capability that we have. And there are some structures that are out there that we can use, some at the state level. But I just want you to think that the reason that you have an audit committee is to strategically manage your audit capability. And that audit capability is an accountability function. It's efficiency and effectiveness of your government.
and managing that, and then synchronizing the tools that you have, if you think strategically, the management tools and the audit tools, to be able to achieve the efficiency, the effectiveness, and the accountability of primarily financial functions first and foremost, but also for policy and operations as well. So I just wanted to add that to the discussion.
Thank you. I think that's valuable information. Carol?
Yes, as a new member to this committee and to the whole commission, I have been a little swamped with information. But for some chances, I may have mentioned an email. I actually did listen to your committee meeting where Elizabeth gave her presentation. And so I'm sort of getting things mixed up. I'm looking here now on the website to see even what the function of this committee is, if there's a description of the committee and what its role and responsibilities are. Does that exist? And is that something that it clearly is different than the other committees like the LRC and the government operations because it works with the Office of Operation and Analysis. So it would have a more specific function than just things that are assigned to it. But is there any mission statement of what we're supposed to be doing anywhere?
There are some documents outlining procedures and mission. Stephanie, have you supplied those for Carol? I mean, we actually maybe all might want to refresh ourselves on them because it's been a while since
I mean specifically on the committee. I have to get some things from her, and I saw some other things about the office and the audit process, but about the committee responsibility. And so when I'm thinking about the audit thing, I think I'm thinking a lot of the things that Elizabeth brought up in that presentation. In terms of, it seems like it would make sense to have some citizens involved, but I think it would need to be very clearly outlined what their expertise is. Some on the other committees, there's something where you have to be working in some construction area or this area, that area. And I think that would need to be spelled out so that you are bringing that expertise into this.
Hank?
Yeah, I just want to add on a little bit to what Beth said. And it kind of goes in what Carol just mentioned. I think before you even look at possibility of adding any citizens who might be able to take a look at things, I think the committee has to come together and come amongst themselves, be totally in agreement with what their function is. And maybe that's what you'll need that work session about. Because as I understood from a few conversations was that every time an audit was approved, it was a lot of back and forth. Some commissioner wanted to go back and check and make sure that had the right data, did not have enough data coming back. So there was just a lot of gaps. And was that really needed? So maybe the audit committee needs to come together with a mission statement. What are the areas y'all want to protect, and how do you want to go about doing it? And I think that will help you identify any people if y'all need to bring from the outside.
So I'm not sure that it's our place to come up with that mission statement since it's the mayor's charge to appoint committees. I mean, we only exist at the direction of the mayor. Like, I feel like this is the conversation we need to have with the mayor and possibly with the entire commission to re-envision the function of this committee, to make it more effective and more qualified, quite frankly. I don't know that, I mean, this is something I'd have to bring up with the attorney, but I don't know that we even have the power to decide what our mission statement or our function might be because we exist at the pleasure of the mayor. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Just a quick comment, and I go back to the establishment of a control environment, which has the accountability requirements satisfied. And this is the reason that there's an audit committee, is to be a piece of that kind of the internal control processes of our government. But like a lot of other pieces that we have in our government, it's really piecemeal. So that's a concern, to be able to identify material weaknesses, to be able to have that reasonable assurance that we've satisfied the checks and balances and all the things that need to be taken care of in the business functions and the policy functions of the government. So it's not codified. So we have a lot of pieces and parts. The audit committee is one, the other, this commission that we're just finishing up, and the struggle that we had with the same problem, being able to identify what our function was, what specifically that we were supposed to do, and the conflict that was created by people having completely different concepts of what that's supposed to be. But that's an important piece. So the Overview Commission was a piece that was embedded in the charter in order to help the government continue in a process of being better, and also for the accountability piece. We have a lot of little pieces and parts here and there, and I know we have a lot of management structures that also satisfy internal control requirements, but it's not cohesive, and it's not comprehensive, and it's not connected. So identifying what the committee should be doing in a part of an entire internal control system, to include external committees, to include even the grand jury does financial analysis once a quarter. I don't know if you guys ever see that. Once a quarter, they report on the financial health of the government. That's buried in grand jury reports. So it's an internal control piece, but it's not embedded or ingrained in any, no one else sees it. No, for the most part, nobody even knows it's there. So this is an issue and a problem in our government, that we can't get these pieces together. So this is just a part of it. It's a very important part, because the audit committee needs to be defined. So any internal control system you have, one of the most important elements is defining the roles and responsibility of the audit committee in a municipal government. So you've got it, you've nailed it on the head, but it's that particular problem is in a lot of different pieces and parts of our government. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of illustrative of what we see as an issue and a problem. And like I'm saying, I think we're very lucky. We have a very good government, very responsible and accountable government in many ways, but we do not have a comprehensive internal control system. And this is just an example of where we're a little bit broken.
So, Beth, this presentation that you gave to us, this is material that is not included in the Overview Commission report, correct?
So we did actually make a copy of that presentation with the notes to include to all the commissioners, okay. As an attachment to the Overview Commission report.
Okay, good.
So this was a problem, again, a structural problem with the Overview Commission, a structural problem that we ran into as the commission members decided to decommission the commission early because of the pandemic and because of all the problems with members not being able to support continue to support the work of the commission. So we're going to brief that all next month in the work session. What happened with the Overview Commission, the bit of things that we do have to contribute is in the report, and then we added on as an attachment this report to the audit committee, just because those that worked on it felt that it was a very important part, and wanted to make sure that it wasn't lost. Again, all of us wanted to contribute to some effort to help go forward and solve problems, and so we decided to include it as an attachment.
Beth, I want to thank you and the committee for going beyond what you really had to do and pointing this gap, in our government that needs to be addressed. How many committee members, I guess I'm trying to say, how many committee members, what was the number that you started out with, and where did you end up with as far as participation?
Well, it's hard to say unless we say a specific point. So in the beginning, we started with 21. That's the mandated number from the charter or the instructions to the grand jury on, the requirement was 2 members from each district and 1 at large. We immediately lost within the first 3 months 3 members. The grand jury had a hard time. They had advertised over 3 months for people to apply, and they struggled to get enough applications from each district. And it seemed toward the end that almost everyone that did finally apply at the end was appointed to the commission. So we didn't have an equal number from each district. So we didn't satisfy that requirement. And we did have members that kind of came with a particular agenda that may not have been what the appointment to the commission was asking. And for some members too, it wasn't what they expected. So we lost a couple right in the beginning, the first 3 months when the commission was getting off the ground, trying to define its mission and its role and how it was going to accomplish that. And then we were hit with the pandemic. And so then we had, of course, as you'll remember, back in March, from March to May, trying to figure out how anybody was going to accomplish anything. And many of the members were professional members of the medical community and many from UGA, and they were just unable to continue to work because their personal workload was so difficult. And then we had many older members who immediately said that they just could not contribute anymore. So we went back and forth for 3 months or 4 months till June, and then we tried to continue to do with limited amount to continue the work of the commission to redefine what we should be doing and how we could do it. But we suffered additional members. So just to answer your question, by the time we were done, I think we had 9 members that were actually operating, and some of those were not able to contribute anymore to the meetings as well, just because their schedules didn't allow. So we had hardworking, I would say 6 or 7 of the membership really at the very end. And everyone did their best that they could to contribute.
And I'll just close, and this will be my final statement, I think. I'll just close again by saying thank you for your service. I know how unappreciative sometimes it seems, but it's much needed. So thank you both, and the committee members that hung in there, and even the ones that had to leave. I thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard to get it.
They all believed in what we were trying to do, each one.
Thank you. And thank you for all your hard work and your focus on, this committee and this office. And I hope that, when we have our work session next month, those of us on this committee can offer our insight on, the presentation and some recommendations to really make some improvements on this whole accountability aspect of our local government. Patrick, do you have any insight? I don't think we've heard from you. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here now. The overview chairman, she did a fantastic job explaining everything, and I agree with her and Dr. Myers with their sentiments. So everything looks good.
Mm-hmm. So does anybody have any objections to approaching the mayor with a recommendation that we consider a new organization of this committee to include a majority citizen committee?
Commissioner Lake, I haven't.
I just have one question. If we unanimously agree to that, wouldn't we have to have an idea of what that would look like? How many folk, wouldn't it be, shouldn't we consider what the recommendation should that model be, instead of just passing it on that we need to do this?
My own personal ideas. Does anybody else have an idea what they'd like to see?
Commissioner Wright wanted to.
Do you have something to say, Allison?
Well, yeah, of course I do, but I have to leave at 6:30. My impression, I agree there needs to be improvements with the efficiency of how the audit committee works with the Office of Operational Analysis and the internal auditor. I don't agree that we can't make what we do in this structure work better. But then how to get there is another thing. Melissa, I did want to remind you of a time that you and I met with the mayor. I was going through a frustrating time with the audit committee, and that you and I met with him and we talked about some things, and he felt like we met too often and that we were maybe not following the mission of the audit committee. So it might be that we learn what is on the books in the expectations for us, to review it, to address how it would be improved. Do you remember that? He said that we're supposed to just review reports and have checkpoints on getting the reports done, but us not necessarily get into the weeds, so to speak, of the material that the auditor's doing.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, I mean, and that's technically, what we're supposed to be doing, but often we have meetings and there's requests to the auditor for more information, which ends up postponing any decisions to move the reports forward.
I'm wondering if we need to just have a beginning of the year audit committee review of what our mission is and stick with it, which is helping the internal auditor get the reports done, learn if there's barriers, like we did with the software and making sure the software's there, and have those checkpoints. But I mean, that's where I am on that. So I'm not in a position to make a recommendation. I think each of us with our experience on the audit committee does have feedback that we can share. But
I have some feedback. This to me is just, this has been a waste of my time for 45 minutes, and I hate to say that. But last year we went through all this debate and discussion about creating this audit survey. We got some new audit software, and we're not even allowing for that process to move forward. And now we've been talking 45 minutes about reconstituting this entire committee. I mean, with all respect, Madam Chair, I mean, what's going on? Why are we not just looking at the audit reports, reviewing the audits, passing the reports out of the committee? I mean, it's what we've always done. I mean,
well,
I'm lost right now.
We got this presentation from an overview commission, which is a charter mandated process that found some serious inefficiencies, with
What's the inefficiency? What's the serious inefficiency?
Well, the fact that, audits are not getting done.
Okay, why is that the committee's problem?
On the committee where, we're not allowing them to move forward. We're taking.
Okay, all right, one at a time. One at a time. There's a serious inefficiency of audits not getting done. Okay, what do we do okay, I hear you. So let's talk about that specifically.
Well, we also.
So what does this committee need to do to help the audits get done more expeditiously? Well, at the top of the meeting, we heard that the audit office is understaffed right now.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's take that into consideration. Okay, so what's another serious inefficiency?
Well, a serious inefficiency is often we have audits, when we do have audits presented to us, there's feedback from the committee that asks for more information and it gets delayed another month, and we might get the audit back and then it says, we might have someone on the committee that says we have too much information and we need more time to process it.
So the overview commission gave us a report that said we are asking too many questions and delaying the audit production.
That's just
I didn't see that in the report.
I mean, actually, maybe we should ask the members of the overview commission, to sum up what they see as the reason we're having this conversation and the reason that they dove so deeply into this particular issue, enough so as to present a whole separate presentation.
Okay, yeah, okay, throw it to the overview commission. So I'm curious to know, what are the serious inefficiencies of this audit committee that need to be addressed?
I don't know if I would characterize it as serious inefficiencies. I would characterize it as a body that is not really strategic in its work. So it's not a body that's managing the audit systems and the internal control systems of the government, which is really what I think is the primary function of the audit committee. It is managing individual audits. It's managing individual questions and individual problems. It's not managing systems. So it's not operating at a level that it should be operating in managing the auditing system and its interface with an internal control system of the management of the government. So this becomes a problem because these are accountability functions in the government and they're not being managed in a strategic way.
But wouldn't those systems be managed by like the audit office, the auditor's office? Isn't that traditionally the position that manages these types of systems?
Right. So the audit should be, as we mentioned in our briefing, the audit function in the government should be programmatic. It should be an audit program. It shouldn't be individual audits that you're focusing on. You should be establishing a control environment in the government that expects to be audited every year or every 2 years or every 3 years from either internal or external agency. These are kind of basic standard approach to the audit function. But instead, we're auditing piecemeal, one by one. We're coming up with individual audits instead of saying, well, this is where we have a problem in this particular area, so we're going to do an audit. Or we had something that came in the news in this area, so we're going to audit it, right? That's not an audit program. That's a reaction to problems that might have been stopped ahead of time if there was a proper audit program, that these problems were identified prior to them becoming issues. So
how many more staff do you recommend we might need to have a more robust audit program conducted by our auditor's office?
First, you have to know what your audit program is. First, you have to have the strategic viewpoint. And even we say you could take out of politics, but you put it into politics too, saying from the political viewpoint, how much risk do you have in your government? Where are your risk points? So you have a government that has $220 million operational budget, right? And you have, I don't know, 60, 70 million on top of that, the capital, right? So you're
how does our new audit survey tool attack that issue of creating a more programmatic approach?
So having a good audit tool, first of all, it takes away, audits are very technical. There's thousands of pieces of minutia. It's complicated to do it properly and correctly. So like any other good software, it takes a lot of that workload out of the individual person and puts it on the software, right? So first of all, when you get down in the weeds, a lot of that's taken care of by your software. But establishing what the program is going to be, for example, just a simple example, how any particular business function in the government, how often should they be audited? Simple question. A manager in any office, in the water office, for example, that manager, how often should they expect to be audited, internally or externally? It's a control environment, so they should know as a manager what is the expectation here in Athens-Clarke County, right? In the airport, how often should the airport consider themselves to have an audit, right? So the recommendation for an audit for any airport is once a year. My experience with the airport is they've never had a standalone audit. So we have our financial audit every year, and everybody seems to think that covers it, but it doesn't for business functions, right? Now, there may be more there that I'm not aware of, but the question is the audit committee aware of the control environment the business functions of the government are in? So you can't come up with a program until you know what the risk is, and you don't know the risk is until you understand the environment that you're in that requires audits. So
well, that's why we created that survey. Did y'all take a look at that survey that gets sent to all the departments?
That does. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The risk assessment survey.
We did, and we have, and I'll blame everything on COVID. We have never followed through on. And every time we have a meeting, it seems like we get derailed. And I think
who, the overview commission or the audit committee?
Audit committee. And that's why I wasn't asking
the audit committee looking at the review. I was asking the overview commission if they had looked at the risk assessment survey that we passed.
No. But see, the question is,
because that was kind of our first step towards trying to get a programmatic approach to get a baseline assessment of where the vulnerabilities are within each department.
Right. And very specifically, that's important. That's an important function. That's an important thing to accomplish. But there is kind of a standard too that you can go to first. So before you start asking and going down deep and saying, you tell me where all the risks are down in your operation, there are standard risks for an organization our size. So the number of people that we serve in our community, the size, the actual size of the budget, the amount of money that passes, the number of contracts that we do, the structure of our government. There are inherent risks in that are kind of standard for every government. So that's always a good starting point. And this is why it might be good to have a technical person on the audit committee to be able to understand that. So that's your baseline, right? So you can take that and you can find best practices for internal control procedures for municipal governments of 125,000 people with a $200 million operational budget. You can do that without having to go down and identify specific risk. That specific risk needs to be established at the management level, which is exactly what you did, right? So you not only want to know yourself where the risks are, you want the managers at all those levels to be able to identify that risk. And then you want an internal control environment that checks that risk and updates that risks as the environment changes and grows. So these, when you talk about being programmatic, there are basically 5 elements for internal control programs. And one of the keys is the strategic planning from the audit committee. They know their roles and responsibilities in that internal control system, and the audit is just another part of that.
But the way we conduct audits now, I mean, some of these audits are taking 8, 9, 10 months. So if we're going to audit every department every 1 or 2 years, I mean, we're going to need a dozen employees in the auditor's office. Possibly.
Right. So the type of audits that you do also can be different, right? So you can have completely comprehensive audits, which is what you've done to do because you have done so few audits that when an organization actually gets an audit, they're going to go inside out and upside down, right? That you have to do so comprehensive and so detailed because you may never see them for another 10 years with the number of audits that you're doing. If you have a regular internal control system that's set up through the management system, and each one of these departments has their internal control checklist and their risk assessment that they should update every single year, that if they know that that's looked at by the audit department once a year, that's an easy and clever way to be able to at least get a superficial look of your entire risk environment every year. And you can do it now that you have the audit software. You can design the audit software that you're interfacing with internal control systems in the management system, right? So I don't know what kind of management internal control systems that we have in the government. Blaine should be able to tell us what they have because I know they do a lot of performance analysis and performance management, and that may be part of the internal control system. But every government job that I've ever been in, anytime I managed anything, we had an annual internal control assessment. And the manager had to do that. As a manager, I had to do it. All my sub-managers had to do it. And it may only be 5 questions if you don't have too high a risk environment. If you're running a finance department, then you've got hundreds of things that you have to be able to check because it's accounting and accountability.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I really would like y'all to take a look at our risk assessment survey. I mean, we looked at other communities, we modeled this, we worked on it for months last year. I'm kind of surprised that y'all didn't get a look at that because this really was a tool that we were hoping would accomplish a lot of what you're talking about right now, to have annual check-ins with departments, answering questions, identifying risks, and then tailoring our audit work plan to that input that we received to try to take it out of this knee-jerk, oh, I heard there's a problem over there, send them over there. You know, we can kind of get this annual diagnostic or biennial diagnostic. So I feel like we're on that path.
That risk assessment was done from the audit committee, or it was done through management?
It was done through the audit committee. The auditor, Maddox, worked with other communities, came up with some proposals, came up with survey questions. We looked at it in multiple meetings. We passed it.
She did brief the commission in the early days, almost a year ago now, on that effort. I do remember that.
Yeah.
I do remember the spreadsheet on that. So we did see it.
I'd love y'all to see that. I don't know if you're still impaneled or whatever, if you still are, but I mean, I think it would be productive for y'all to look at that and incorporate that into what you're telling us, so that at least you could say, okay, this is kind of like you're moving in the right direction.
Right. So the risk assessment is one of the 5 components of internal control systems, and that risk assessment is an important component. But there's 5 components to internal control systems, and having just one component, again, the inability to be able to cross over. The audit committee is in a unique position because they're elected officials that are on a committee. So, for example, Manager Blaine, if you could say, was that risk assessment integrated into management efforts on the internal control systems of each level of management in the county government? That would give me a lot more assurance that the internal control system that might either already be there or maybe have developed as a result of that, that you have created the control environment, which is another pillar of internal control and control environment, that you're integrating that risk into management systems.
Well, I'm not sure it was designed. I'm certainly not speaking for Auditor Maddox or the Audit Committee with that express purpose of implementation in mind. I think it was more of sort of an assessment for topics for the Audit Committee to decide and help prioritize. To Chair Link's comment about trying to take the politics and be more methodical about those assignments.
Well, but you would see the survey responses. I mean, you would see that those would go through. These are folks who work under your office. You would see what gets inputted on those forms, so you could incorporate those into the work that you do. Some issues might be identified in this survey that's created that might be something fresh to your eyes, and you can incorporate that in your work, right?
Well, perhaps. I mean, some of the risk questions asked were just things that were present. Do you receive grants and things of that nature? And I don't want to start to parse it. I will say I'm not sure that we got the aggregate data back, or that's been shared yet. But anyway, I mean, there's the potential for what Chair Higgins is saying.
The risk assessment survey has gone out, correct?
Yes, it was. I think the responses were received.
And they have come back, the responses. Okay.
The only thing I was suggesting, the reason why I supported this is because the questions that your frustration, Commissioner, has been with my frustration, but I want to see this process through. And I think when you have someone with some knowledge that is on the committee that can help ask the right questions and guide us, I agree. We created the risk management assessment, but I think that when you have somebody who is in this world of auditing and accounting, you bring an extra dynamic. So I'm not saying we're not doing good work. I'm just saying it's been slow because a lot of it has been trial and error, and a lot of it has had some political backlash for some of the commissioners. We need an objective person that understands this. So even if it's all commissioners and one community person that has that background can keep us going in the right direction. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Well, I mean, moving forward, I would like to know what Ms. Higgins thinks about our risk assessment survey and take a look at it, give us feedback.
I would be very happy to do that. And I also would like to propose that I do a little background research and propose to the committee these ideas about what are the goals and responsibility of the audit committee, or what they should be, to give a different perspective in terms of how it's done in other places, or how I would take what might work here, to be, again, more strategic tool to manage the internal control system of our local government. I think if I could do that, I think that might be helpful to set a direction, and then get to try and look at the internal control systems that we already have in place. And I know, Lane, that we put some new software, some performance management software in place already just recently. And I was just wondering if there was an internal control component to that would be able to dovetail with these efforts, this risk assessment efforts on the audit side.
Thank you for the question. And Chair, if I might, it's called ClearPoint, and I'm not sure that it's really meant for internal control. It's more of helping to lay out strategic plans, if you will, and initiatives and strategies that are happening, as well as performance measures associated with those. And even if so as you can imagine, it would be like a tree, and you start with the goal and you go down the strategy initiative. And then once you drill down, you can get into actual things that are happening and look at Gantt charts and performance measures, but it's not an internal control component to it that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Do we
have any automated internal control integrated into the management system at all, or is this something that would have to overlay on what you currently have?
We don't have anything automated to that extent. As far as internal controls and financial policies, again, and as it turns out, the external auditor will be presenting the same night that y'all are. They always note some of the internal control deficiencies with some of our magistrate court judge, and that there's only one person handling funds and things of that nature. That usually, to that extent, Beth, that comes up, through our external auditor, but we don't have any internal software to that.
Right. So it's a good tool, and it's not hard to have internal control systems at every management level. It's not hard, and it gives the auditor a start point for at least superficial audits, annual audits, to identify, like the external financial auditor checks these internal controls that are mandatory for government funds and management of government funds. So that's part of their job, to evaluate that. And this is, it's the only annual audit that I'm aware of that we do by the external financial audit. It's the only one that I'm aware that we do every year. So they're prepared for that audit, and the internal controls that probably are aligned with that audit are more carefully paid attention to, right? And so you can do the same thing across all the other areas that are not just financial risk areas, but other areas that we can have material weaknesses. So this whole idea of this reasonable assurance of these weak points, these areas that you actually identify in this risk assessment, what is the program to make sure that we're checking where these weak points are in these risk points that we find in policy, in finance, and in different kind of procedures, contractual procedures, and any place where large amount of goods or even small amount of goods pass, that we have the proper controls in place. So I think we've got it nailed down on the finance part, because we get excellent results every year from that. But there's a lot of areas that we just don't know, and we don't know what we don't know. So I'm going to take a look at the risk assessment one, and then say, okay, my next question will be, once we've identified these risks, how do we set a control environment that we manage those risks?
Right.
And as those risks change, how do we identify that change, and how do we check them? And that's the second step and the third step beyond just risk assessment.
That's what I was hoping that survey would help accomplish. Exactly.
Right.
I'd like to ask Manager Blaine or Auditor Maddox if anyone did some kind of a results, if they summarize what came out of the risk assessment, because I'm embarrassed to admit I did not come across that survey. Now I recall that you all had done that, but I do not recall looking at it. Did you all put a summary report on it or anything?
No, I think we just had that presentation very early in I think even February, almost a whole year ago, that was in progress, that was being done, and it was a very nice spreadsheet that showed where they were on that.
Maybe Auditor Maddox can shed some light there for us.
Yes, sir. So I wanted to remind both Chair Higgins and Hunay that, I don't know if you remember, but last year when we both deployed those risk assessments, there was a strong, deliberate purpose from the Overview Commission to not appear as there was a conflict of interest. So on purpose, we did not share the report. I did notice that we had a lot of similar questions. The Overview Commission was looking at several big areas, whereas our questions were designed for all of the departments. And so we were aware of each other's survey, and they did go out and ask similar questions to departments. The results would have been different, I am happy to share the results to you both. What we did was we presented preliminary information between July and August, and it went before the Mayor and Commission, I believe, during the September meeting, just as an explanation, and overall the results were the certain and specific departments that rose up to the top. That was the gist of that last meeting that we had. And there was one more thing I was going to say.
We'll share the survey too.
Internal software. The survey and the results. I will provide that to you both. The software, the auditing software, I do believe has a component where you can track internal controls. And it is something that I look at in every audit, but it would be nice to have it automated. And so with every audit, which, if it's a department or a program or a process, if it's built into that software, it'll be tremendously helpful.
I have a question for Chair Higgins and Hunaid. You looked at other similar communities and how their audit office functions, how their audit committees function. How many of them have audit committees that are purely made up of elected officials?
I will answer that for Asheville because I did work and look at them quite closely within, whatever I was able to. In that instance, the auditor reports to the manager. They say they have a very cooperative relationship because I did inquire about that. How does that work? The only commissioner on that is there's only one commissioner who's the mayor pro tem, and then the auditor, in this case herself, chooses 3 or 4 folks from the city. She invites them because she needs the help to make sure she's on track, she's doing the things as that is needed. But do understand, their structure is different. The auditor is, in that case, reporting to the manager. So there is all civilians and one person from the commission who takes that information and takes it to the commission. But none of the audits have to be approved by any commission. And I kind of joked about it. And she said it would be a nightmare to try and figure it out because everything is automated. Interestingly, she doesn't have any software. She shared with me a spreadsheet, which I'm pleased to share with you. The whole city sees it. So that's how she developed her own system to be able to keep track of what is going on, when should be audited, how often does the audit come in. But once again, I emphasize that is a different structure of government.
Right, and I think as well that it's worthwhile to do a little bit more research because that is one example. They are not a unified government. They, as we are, so that they have differences in size and differences in complexity because they're not a unified government. It's another state, of course, so you do have different requirements in different states and a different type of environment that you're
working in. Well, the size is fairly close to ours.
Right. There are some similarities. So as I say, it might be worthwhile to look at several communities and see how they do it and see if they think that it works as well as it can. Because there's a great frustration here that I can see that, there's a great optimism that we can function well as an audit committee, but there's so many questions on how to optimize it, how to make it work, and what level they should be working. And from my perspective, certainly the fact that this city is more strategic in how they do it, in the sense that the audit committee is doing on systems and programs, and the auditor runs the audit and how many audits and when they're done and how they're done. So I suppose that the auditor makes that proposal once a year. This is what we plan for the year. This is the system, yay or nay, and they go forward and they do their work. But I don't know, again, the size of the audit offices, the funds and the resources the audit office has. So you can have an audit office with one person if you externally contract contractors to come in to do each one of your audits. And depending on how many do in a year, how much money that you have to be able to do that. So we do the financial audit. We pay a good deal of money for that because we're required to do it. It's mandated that we do it, and we do it that way. So the other ones are not mandated. So how you do it depends on how much risk that you see that you have, and how complicated that it is, and how much expertise and what you got to pay for that expertise. So, and how deep your audits are going to be, how deep, how complicated, how deep they're going to be, how time consuming. So there are some auditors who do it all themselves, one-man show, perfect, you know, for depending on the size. Audits that have very comprehensive offices that actually work under managers instead of, they still are independent in the sense of what they're supposed to do, but they're structurally not a separate office, that they operate under the management, because it makes a lot of sense that the integration of management control and audit control, it's in their best interest for them to be able to work together, to be able to optimize again their work. So anyway, I would like to do that. I'll be very happy to do that, and Hunad likes to do that too. So he has a lot of folks that he knows, and we can get some get you a spreadsheet on maybe 5 or 6 towns, how they do it, what's different and what's the same, and then proposals for what might work here. And then you guys can turn it over and see what you think.
I appreciate it, and I know people do things differently depending. Other question is their effectiveness. You know, you can say they do it like this, but is it effective? That's what we're trying. We're stuck. We should not even be at this point this late in the game, but there's something that has been a barrier from keeping us from moving forward. So while we're looking at other areas, we need to take in consideration, is their process effective? You know, does it, and do we, and we are, we may be different, but then I think there's some internal things that Commissioner, which commissioner was it? Edwards, was asking our chair, that maybe we need to look at what we as a committee have contributed to this process also. So it's not one person, it's a committee working, and it's work in progress. But I do think everything that Beth has said, that from her expertise, she knows what to ask. She knows what she's looking for. When you have a bunch of commissioners that are there because we're commissioners, and something rolls by us and we just couldn't catch it because we didn't know, I just think it's good to have that extra. It keeps all of us honest, and it keeps all of us knowledgeable. So,
and I think truly you want to be able to have the systems in place so it's caught for you, that you don't have to be the ones that actually catch it. And the efficiency and effectiveness of control systems and audit systems is almost, you have to deal with it in the negative. So you're going to find things that don't work when risk is not identified and you have disasters. That's where identified. The good thing here is that, you know, if you don't have disasters, is it because you have a great systems without controls, or you have a great system with controls? So it's almost, you can't prove the negative all the time. That's the problem with this kind of thing. Proving efficiency and effectiveness, you have to prove the negative, which is very hard to do. That's why I say I think we have a terrific local government, because, you know, we don't seem to have these huge disasters. And I gave you an example in another county where they did have huge disasters, and it turns out that, you know, someone in management was actually an internal control specialist, an auditor, and unfortunately that was the one that ended up doing the thing, knowing the system good enough to be able to get around it. So if the control system wasn't in place to identify those that are managing the system, then you're in trouble, right? So I think we're very lucky and very fortunate. And I don't think lucky and just fortunate. I think we have a good government, and I think people are good, honest, hardworking. But that doesn't mean that things can't happen. So you're always, from the audit perspective, you're trying to avoid fraud, waste, and abuse. These are the things that you have to be able to set up systems, and you can only be responsible for trying to set up systems to avoid fraud, waste, and abuse, that you can get reasonable assurance that you've done what you needed to do to prevent that. And that, in my mind, that's the role of the committee. Now, specifically the duties and functions on how you do that, I will give you some proposals in things that, in places where I say it seems to work. But, you know, the fact that it's not perfect right now, that hasn't seemed to hurt us too much, you know, so that's a good thing, right?
I have a question. Did the Overview Commission look into the history of the office and the committee, and you know, when it was the the Office of Operational Analysis was actually completely shut down and reorganized.
So this is the thing with the audit in our size government. So there was a time where we didn't think that we needed it. And this is, again, completely, as already been mentioned today, do we need the audit committee at all? Do we need an Office of Operational Analysis at all? Do we have the size and complexity of a government that we need to be doing that? From my experience, yes, we do. The question is how much money and how much resources that you need to be able to do that
So
with.
did y'all look into how it was reopened? And I mean, was there an audit committee before that shut down? You know, since the audit committee is not ensconced in the charter, when did it come into being, and was it always made up of this composition?
I don't know how. I know we had an auditor before. I know that the Overview Commission, the last Overview Commissions, worked a little bit better because the Overview Commission was considered at that time to be kind of a function of the audit. And then since it was closed down and then reappointed, that kind of relationship had kind of fallen away. But you have to get somebody with a little bit more history. Some past mayors. Blaine's been around a little bit longer and he may know, our current auditor may know. She's been in the county government for a while in terms of how that worked. But
yes, I can answer that question.
I do have a little information on that, not entirely. The person you probably want to speak with is ex-Commissioner David Lynn. It was his idea to come up with the audit committee because he was very concerned about the direction of the audits that were taking place for a while. And it was a little time after that they shut down the office. And what prompted Mayor Denson to start it back up again, I do not know, but maybe Auditor Maddox can. But it was started by David Lynn, and I think it was about 2007, 2009, if I'm not mistaken. I written down someplace. I don't have that notes.
Well,
He
could we
introduced
maybe?
it at a meeting in 2007, and it was voted by the Mayor Commission in 2008, and it started with five commissioners.
Yeah.
Okay. Madam Chair, moving forward, where do we go from here? Can we kind of get some action points and maybe wrap up?
I mean, I would like us to initiate a discussion when we do have that work session about the function of the committee, and I really would like to bring up an idea of reorganizing the committee so it's not purely a committee of elected officials, so that it does have some real citizen expertise on it. Because quite frankly, none of us on this committee has any expertise in strategic planning or analysis or organization. I mean, actually, Carol might.
I mean, you keep talking about us like you're throwing us under the bus. Quite honestly, why don't you just come up with a proposal of what you want the committee to look like, and then you can. I mean, what are you even talking about? I'm a lawyer. I'm a small business owner. I think I can read a report. I mean, I'm sorry, but why do you keep going down that road? If you want to change the composition of the committee, come up with a proposal and share it with us.
Okay,
I'm open to it.
We reorganize the committee so it includes 2 commissioners and 3 citizens, qualified citizens who apply for the position, much like any other board and commission.
Okay, put it on paper and email it out. We'll look at it. I mean, make it a plan.
I want to see if anybody else on the committee has other ideas. And obviously nobody does. So yeah, I will put that out there. That's what I'll do. But I'm hoping that, I can get some backup from the rest of this committee, because this commission has identified.
I think you'll get because let's move on. Commissioner Edwards suggested that you put us something in writing. Eds and Hune are going to give us some information for our next month. And if anybody has any information after we get their information, maybe we can hash it out and be prepared to make a good recommendation. How about that?
I think that's a good idea. And I mean, it's clear that the Overview Commission found some inefficiencies, and I believe that a committee that has more expertise in these issues can help to address those.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion that we adjourn. Oh, no, I can't. I'm not on the committee.
No, you're not.
I guess my final note would be, I support it. Okay, they found some inefficiencies, still getting clarity on that, and they didn't see our risk assessment survey. So, okay, I look forward to them looking at that and providing us feedback. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Aye.
Aye.
And thank you, Hunaid.
Thank you, Beth and Hunaid.
You bet. You bet. Take care, you guys.
Thank you.
For your hard work. I know it's hard work, these meetings.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.